But there we go, guys. That was 3 hours, or 2.5 hours of Final Fantasy V. We've cut a little bit into the lunch hour, but that's okay. So, what is going to happen now? Well, in a short moment, I'm going to be taking a small sabbatical. I'm going to be taking a small break and stepping away for the rest of the hour. But Afe and anyone else who wishes to join him in Discord will be sticking around to keep you all entertained. As ever, though, we are here for one very important reason. We are here to raise money for St Basils, which is the youth homeless charity that helped support me when I became homeless back in November of 2021, and continues to support me. Why is my camera frozen?
No idea on that front.
I unplugged the wrong thing. I unplugged my camera.
That helps.
That's why the camera says, for fuck's sake, Miney. Right, we'll try this again. 1 second, everyone. Yeah, we're here to raise money for St Basils, which... oh, there's an ad break, for God's sake. Alright, I'll let the ads play and then we'll talk and I'll introduce you and go to break.
Timings.
Yeah, gotta love them. Gotta love them. Coming up, though, for the rest of the day, I suppose we can talk a little bit about that while we wait for things to come back. We have... after lunch, we have Go With Your Friends with me, the wonderful Afe, and the wonderful Sabro. Coming up after that, we have Among Us. Then after Among Us, we have another mod takeover break. After that, we have some Golf With Your Friends. And after that, we have some Gartic Phone to round off the stream before our little closing remarks. We are currently sat at £52 raised so far, and the current goal is £200. Hopefully we can raise more than that. I want to try and hopefully beat the amount we managed to raise for mine back in 2021. But currently we are sat after about 3 hours on £52. So thank you everyone who has donated so far. Though again, I have to remind us all while we're all here, we're here to raise money for St Basils, which is the youth homeless charity which helps support young people ages 16 to 24 in the West Midlands and helps them to support them with accommodation, but also more importantly tries to work with prevention efforts before homelessness unfortunately happens. Again, St Basil's invites you to think of the table with each of the 4 legs being different things, and the tabletop being homelessness. If one of those 4 support systems breaks, then the table becomes unsteady. If there are too many to break, the table breaks. You get the vibe. So you can donate. Again, it's not through Tiltify, so donations are manually being tracked by the mods, and I want to say a huge thank you to Afe and all of the other mods for helping us to keep track of those donations. I'd like to also say that now that I'm going to hand over to Afe as he does his segment. If anyone wants to join Afe for this, please do let him know. If you're a Twitch mod or above, you can hop into the VC and just join in. But yeah, Afe is going to lead this discussion on retro versus non-retro games. But thank you very much, everyone, for the support so far. And for now, I will hand you over to the wonderful Aetherion Stormwind.
Okay, so I am someone who partakes in both retro games and modern games. Even though I kind of specialize in retro, with one of my favorite games of all time being Grandia, I can thoroughly enjoy a good modern game. So I want to find out where everyone else is in regards to whether they prefer retro or modern, because this is something that typically splits people. I'm one of the few that is basically right in the middle with a slight edge towards retro. I don't know if there's meant to be music. Mostly retro for you, early 2000s, late 90s. Yeah, that's similar for me, but I can even go back even further. My first console, one that most people might not have heard of, the Amiga 600, because I played Civilization at the age of 6. Yeah, quite a heavy game for someone who's just 6. Yeah, just some of my experiences with gaming. Because it's a name from a D&D character, only part of his name. Because I initially wanted to name myself Ethereon on Twitch, but apparently that was taken, so I had to add to it. So I thought, sure, he was a D&D character for me. Add his nickname to it. Oh, nice. I know people who are in game translation. I've always like found myself like enjoying games, but for different reasons than most people would expect. Because I prefer like a good story and gameplay over what most people would expect. Because a lot of games nowadays typically go for flashy graphics and more of like a movie style of like setting over what held them together in the first place, especially when it comes to like JRPGs. Which I'm sure some people have noticed that Final Fantasy VII Remake's line of games are a classic point and case to this. Same here, Calandra. The only modern JRPG series that I've fallen in love with recently is the Trails games, because they hit like good story beats, character progression, and even hit the feels like a goddamn truck. It's a wonderful series of games. Oh, you do story-based games. Yeah, that's the other thing that I've noticed lately with JRPGs. A lot of them have quite the crazy story. So, for me personally, I'm not just one person that just plays JRPGs. I also play like roguelikes, racing games, grand strategy games like Civilization. So yeah, my pool of games is quite diverse. I'm Yeah. One thing I find with retro games in particular is they have a particular charm that a lot of modern games are missing. There's that little bit of polish that seems to make it shine over newer games and make them last in people's memories for longer. Yeah, I'm the same way, Calandra. Why I brought up this subject as something to talk about, because I find as you go on, you go back to the older games and it's like, why did I start dropping this for the more newer games when this is just better? Because let's put it this way: there's a lot of like good games coming out, and those I said good, not amazing. Whereas the older games were, yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to get to about get my point across. Forgetful is that games nowadays tend to be made within a set time frame, whereas the older games didn't have that. They would just be made to be good, no bugs, no nothing. And Cinema, thank you for following Miney. He's currently away, but I'll thank him for you. He's uh, they were made so that everything was perfect. Yeah, we've hit the lucky sevens. Yes, you are. Where do you sit um, within retro and modern games cinema? It's it's something that yes, exactly that. You can only fit so much, so you had to make sure that it was perfect. Graphically, yes, games have advanced, but that's not the main thing. The story is really the story and gameplay is the two things that really draw people to the game. If it can't hit those beats just right, you're not really going to get people to continue on. But yeah, I find that a lot of the retro games just do it so well that a lot of the um, modern games fail to hit the same beats as hard, if that makes sense. They try to do the same, but for whatever reason, it's not hitting the same way because it's copying. Even though a lot of games do copy. Yes, that was like the first like downloadable patch. But here's something that most people didn't realize: the first like quote unquote DLC was actually on a console that most people literally forgot about. Kudos to anyone that knows what console this is, and even more kudos for it actually getting the game that had this DLC. Because I've got a feeling most people I think that's the console. Do you know the game? Okay, anyone else want to have a guess of what game had the first DLC? Because this is something that most people don't realize that because they think DLC was a new thing. No, this was back in like 2000, 2001. It's not a brand new thing. Yeah, if nobody's got any guesses for it, not Total Annihilation, because it was the Dreamcast game in question is actually a JRPG of all things. And one with a very unique backdrop. Because it is Skies of Arcadia. Because it was on the Dreamcast, which had an Ethernet cable connection, you could go online with it and download its DLC from a website. So it had the very first DLC back in, I want to say 2001. So there's a little bit of game trivia for you. It did. Yeah, and that was quite the paywall too for what I think it created up to an extra 2 hours of gameplay. Which is nuts when you think about it. Another game that did a similar thing to Mass Effect 3 was Dark Space. Dark Space 3 in particular. They had the entire... I did not realise that Total Annihilation had monthly releases. Yeah, Skies of Arcadia was the first official DLC. So Total Annihilation was had the prototype DLC. Yeah. It's definitely an interesting subject of where the DLC for games the first instances of that, why was it not on the disc itself in the first place? Is why is that kind of mentality is if it's was going to be a thing anyway, why wasn't it part of the initial release? Most people in general think, oh, it's because they ran out of space on the disc, or cartridge in some cases. For me, I think it was a case of they didn't think about it at the time that the game was in the full process, and then after release, it's there's this that I want to add to it, but we have no way of doing it. Oh, but this console has this neat way of connecting itself to the internet. We can actually get people to download it, kind of thing. Yeah, and they have to meet these certain conditions. Excuse me. It's what I think a lot of the Square Enix games are going down, because they're not hitting the same notes for me personally as some of the older Final Fantasies. because they had like really good stories, character growth, you name it. Whereas the newer ones, yeah, it has that, but doesn't feel like as good as some of the games that came before them. Because they're just going, okay, we have to do the bare minimum to meet this bit while also making these certain goals hit home. And more importantly than anything else, we must make a certain amount of money. Because that's what matters. If I was in the game making industry, I would not really be looking at how much money I'm making from it, is how much of it is actually going out there and how many people are keeping the game, because that is more important personally than making any kind of money in the game, because it's showing that it's grabbed the person's attention. They're sticking with the game and continuing to play it. That's one thing that a lot of games try to get right, but fail with. Especially with some of the more modern ones, because they're going for the whole boardroom approach to make a game. So, what I'm trying to say is, it's not doing the things that retro games did well. That's not to say that a lot of modern games are like this, because there's definitely exceptions to the rule. But it's something that happens a lot recently that I've noticed, but I'm not sure if you all have the same opinion that I have about it, or feelings towards it. Excuse me. Two minds about 15 and 16 are fantastic. Yeah, it's lots. Hey, we've got another donation. Thank you, Sarbo, for donating £30. Yeah, and that's the thing. But from what I've heard about Rebirth, it's really good. Even though it is quite a long game, but at this point, I'm used to really, really long games, because the games in the Trail series of games that I mentioned prior are 80-plus-hour long games. So, yeah. Not short by any imagination. And yeah, that's pretty much what I'm getting on about, Calandra. Hi, Sarbo. How you doing? Do you have a particular opinion between retro and modern games, Sarbo? Because that's currently what I'm asking people. Yeah, 15. I tried it around a friend's house, but it just didn't hit the same like feelings for me. The combat didn't draw me. The music was the one of the few things that actually pulled to me in 15, which is weird. But the world of 15 felt very empty. There's literally, in a world that was meant to have quite a lot of people, it had very few people. They are, and I feel that for certain games, modern is on the most part worse than retro because of how they are made now compared to then. Depends on how far back you go with retro. When it comes to trial and error. There are still some point-and-click adventure games being made, Calandra, though they are mostly under indie type developers. Yeah, the Persona games trying to get into every single game genre now. It's a little nuts. Yeah, most people do, Calandra. The AAA games, I find us can be some of the worst games of the year. I'm not saying that all of them are bad, but a lot of them come out as really buggy messes. A classic case in point of this is Cyberpunk. That was a AAA title, and my god, did it take a long time to get fixed. It was even delayed. To try and fix these bugs, but yeah. To put in perspective, a retro AAA title would be Final Fantasy VII, the OG. There's massive variance. Yeah, and it faltered massively because of that. Scarlo. And that's another thing. AAA games are way overpriced, I find. I think it's more like 50-50. They should have been more firm with the community, just saying it needs more time because we've got these bugs that we need to iron out and we're having trouble ironing them out. If you want a buggy mess, we can give you the buggy mess, but we prefer to make a game that is not. So I'd say that's more 50-50. It's not a clear cut thing because there's definitely a side of it of the people funding the game was that we need to start making money on this project, and they were basically on the side of the community going, release it. Yeah, that's because it comes with the DLC included, Calandra. What's released because it felt. Yeah, is that right? Yeah, very good point there. Forgetful. It's like a lot of them games. A good point for this one is Bethesda games is that they release with a lot of bugs. A lot of them are quite funny. I mean, for example, in Skyrim, yes, this is a bug because it's not meant to happen. When a giant hits you with its club, you go flying. That was never meant to happen. It was just meant to do quite a lot of damage, but it was coded so badly that it makes you act like you're on a bouncy castle and go like 10,000 feet up into the air to fall to your doom. Oh yeah, funny ones do, but there's definitely been more than their fair share of game-breaking ones. When Baldur's Gate 3 first came out, there was a way to soft lock yourself. Admittedly, it's not in the game now because they've patched it out, but there was a way to soft lock, as well as a way to fall through the freaking floor because the contact model was wrong for certain floors. So yeah, modern games, because of the time limits that they've put under, tend to be more buggy, even though retro games took longer to make. Yeah, it's like I wouldn't feel comfortable releasing a game like that if I was a developer. It would, I'd feel sorry for the people buying the game. Yep, exactly that, Calandra. So there's like no one to answer the questions apart from other people in the community who are then fixing the problems themselves by creating a unofficial patch. Because yeah, certain games actually need it to actually function. One of the games, it's not exactly modern, but it's not exactly retro either. Is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. In order for it to work, you need an unofficial fan patch. But it's a brilliant game. Why are you shaking your head at me now, Calandra? What have I said that's wrong? Oh, not me. But yeah, there's a few games that need a fan patch to work. So in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines case, the company ran out of money and could not get any more, so they released it, and it was a very buggy mess. Yes, one of the biggest buggy messes in retro games was one on the PlayStation 1 and was made by the same company as Deus Ex. If you can name this game, I'd be impressed because not many people know about it because of how chronically bad it was. It's also one that needs a fan patch to work, and even then, it only just about works. PlayStation 1, and technically, it was also released on the Game Boy Color. Yeah, not Deus Ex, but it was made by the same company as Deus Ex. That's the only clue I'm giving you because it's a very weird game. I'll give you a few moments. So, have you heard of a game called Daikatana? Yup, this is the game I speak of. It was so buggy when it first came out. you could on console alone. Yeah, it had a release on the Game Boy, which actually ran better because of it having to be downgraded. Oddly enough, yes, it was. It was meant to take like 7 months, and yeah, for some reason, it got released in such a state that it had on the PlayStation 1 a frame rate of 10 frames per second. The AI companions that you have with you that are you're forced to take with you through the game are so stupid that they would run in front of you and take your gunfire and promptly dying. And the Daikatana itself, the legendary sword of the game, doesn't hit where it's looking like it's hitting. It's hitting in such a random spot in a field of frame somewhere in that bit that you're seeing. You're more often not going to be missing, despite you're swinging right at them, which is great design. And the polygons could definitely have done with a bit more polish, because my god, is it literally angled blocks to make everything. The faces look like they've been pixelated to the nth degree. That you can't make anything out of their faces, let alone anything else. It's bad. I believe it took like them close to 2 years. Yeah, in the end, it's all relative, but a lot of the time, with how things are going now, it's becoming more of a problem for modern games. But retro games did have its own issues in certain cases. That's why I can it's really pinpoint that certain ones in particular. Daikatana is probably the most notable one, because yeah, it was horrendously bad, and it was even in some game magazines like hyping it up, saying it's going to be the next game of the year. Yes, it was advertised as that. Boy, did they eat their words. Yeah, the Elder Scrolls horses are known for their immortality and for being able to climb up the impossible angles. Looking at you, Skyrim horse, that can almost climb up a 90-degree angle. Okay, let's hear it, Calandra. I'm interested about this bit of digression. Okay. Yeah, though a lot of the consoles tended to use a lot of the same sound chips, but there was a big difference between what, say, for example, Sony, Sega, and Nintendo were doing at the time. Because Sony and Sega typically use very similar sound chips, whereas Nintendo used something that was vastly different. So yeah, there was a if they were trying to cater for every console, there was issues. And yeah, Cinema, you are exactly right. It depends on the game and developer, and nostalgia is a big thing for retro. It does carry more weight to it because that's something that a modern game just doesn't have. Even ones such as Final Fantasy VII Remake, it doesn't. It has some of the nostalgia because it's similar, but it's not the same. More of a discussion and slash debate. Cinema. Yeah, it's definitely a thing that carries retro games a lot is the nostalgia. And as Sandra brought up earlier, indie games do try to edge into nostalgia of the retro games with how they are graphically made to look like an old pixel game, or how they hit the certain story beats and what games they are themed after, or a multitude of different cases. Sea of Stars is a really good example. Yeah, granted, this is a few years old now, and has a rather dubious name to it, but it's not one of those games. I'll tell you this now. Is Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass? It grants inspiration from the Earthbound / Mother games because they have different names depending on which part of the world they're in. Breath of Fire, Final Fantasy, and a few others. And yet, it's a really good game with a little bit of horror elements tied into it, kind of like Earthbound did. Makes it a really good game, but not many people have heard about it because it's indie. But that's its own little subsection within the whole game thing because they're kind of like modern retro, even though retro and modern have their own kind of. Yeah, the pixel art style can be really well done. Octopath is really good. Has done a really good thing. All right. At some point, I do plan to play Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass, and it's going to be a thing, though not for the faint-hearted, because of how it takes inspiration from Earthbound is creepy to say the least, but it does it in such a good way. And from what I've seen, the aforementioned Suikoden remakes are meant to be done in the same fashion. Which we don't know if that's going to be releasing anytime soon. Let me take a look at my wish list just to see if they've got a new release date. Nope, it's still TBA, which sucks. Yeah, another game that has a very retro feel is that's also indie, but more towards like Fire Emblem, like classic Fire Emblem, but with a different twist, is Dark Deity, and that's meant to have its sequel release now next year because it got delayed. But they're very, very fun games, even though the first game does have its flaws. I mean, it's been pushed back to next year, so you have a bit of time, Kalandra. We just don't know exactly how much. Because hands up, comments here for who has played Fire Emblem game and with the permadeath like setting on it, because I know some of the newer Fire Emblems that is a toggle, whereas in the older ones that was just a gameplay aspect. You've never played a Fire Emblem game? Interesting. They were the first. They were some of the first strategy games that I ended up playing, Calandra. I didn't get into Signing Force until after I played the first Fire Emblem. Because I got lucky, I had a SNES and the consoles for Signing Force growing up. Because my dad was a bit of a gamer. You've not played a Nintendo console? Oof. You've been unconsciously missing certain like really good games because Nintendo have had some real bangers of games, despite their reputation of being more kid friendly. There we go. GameCube and N64. Two of their bigger consoles, honestly. And the GameCube is honestly one that's underrated because of what it had to bring to the table. For one, it could actually play like a Game Boy Advance because it had an attachment called the Game Boy Player that for one game in particular, which is funny enough a Final Fantasy game, but one of their side titles, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, that if you connected up a Game Boy Advance to it via the attachment, you could play multiplayer. And Jinx, thank you for waiting, Miney. He should be back within the next 6 minutes or so. But welcome in. I hope you're all doing okay. We're currently discussing retro and modern games and people's takes on them. So we'd like to see how you all fit within that bill. And yes, hello again, Jinx. Yeah. I wish I could say the same, but it's definitely one of the only AAA titles I've bought recently. The most recent game I bought was Trails Through Daybreak, and that literally came out. God, not that long ago actually. But yeah, it's Trails Through Daybreak is literally the last game that I've bought recently. And honestly, it's one of the best games that I've bought recently. Even though it is a modern title, it hits the feel of everything. Combat wise, it's different though, because I believe this to be the case. It's the first JRPG that has not only action-based combat, but also turn-based, because it flips between the two on the tip of a hat. So it caters for both styles of life. I find very interesting, and I'm liking it so far. Yeah, I play Grandia a lot, to the point where I've got over 5,000 hours invested into it, and can 100% it within what 34 hours. So yeah. And exactly that, Clown. The older we get, the more inclined we are to play the games that we grew up with. Some of that is due to nostalgia, but there's also more charm in the older games that some modern games are just missing. Some that people don't realise when they haven't played, like, or playing games now, because then this is the era that they've grown up in. It's like there's certain things that are just done better with the older games that are now not done in the modern games. It's not always the case, but it's in the majority now from what I've personally experienced. Civ 2 is still good, and yeah, it's an old game now. But yeah, I think the first Civ is almost 35 years old. I could be wrong. I've pushed myself to finish games. There's a few that I've personally not finished, though. For me personally, streaming has helped me finish games, because it gives me a way to show them off, not only for myself, but it also pushes me to finish them so that everyone who may not have finished it or is coming back for nostalgia is there experiencing it again. Yeah. it it can be a thing, because I've currently got like 4 games on the go. Like Persona 5 Royale. I've got Trails Through Daybreak. I've got, when I finally get back to my Mass Effect and Silent 7 streams. So it's like, yeah, this is going to be taking up a lot of my time. Yeah, it's just, but with Persona 5 and Tales of a Daybreak, between them, I believe that's like 200 hours just on those 2 games alone. Lil Nuts. But the good thing about indie games that is also true. Most of them tend to be at most like 40 hours, which I find is a good length.
What about,
Also, welcome back, Miney.
Thank you. What about chapter-based games though? Like, because I know Indigo Park, for example, is a game I've been looking at quite a lot. The new indie mascot horror game, and that's about an hour for a chapter 1, which, from my experience in chapter 1, is quite a lot. But I quite like chapter-based games, but also I'm kind of like, I want it all now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of chapter games personally, because as I'm with Forgetful here, I prefer to have a game all in one go, because I like to flip through and play it all in one go. I don't like the fact that you have to wait.
I guess it depends on when you're playing them. If you play Bendy now, you can play it in its entirety. I think in some ways chapter games are nice because they help to, like, you know, the project can develop and change and improve.
Yeah.
Like Bendy, I know, went back and redid what I think is actually the prologue, which was their original chapter 1, to improve like that originally before they did the big whole revamp of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and the Telltale games, for example, are a massive case of chapter games that, they can be good, but it's just like they are slow on their pacing. It kind of kills it for me.
yeah, I think the Walking Dead ones I think are quite good, from what I'm aware. I think, was it Jim I watched play the Walking Dead ones? I can't remember if it was Jim. I think Jim played them. I think someone else did. And they really, even though I never watched The Walking Dead or anything like that, you don't have to have watched the show because obviously it's a unique story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously I assume it has references to the show, but like Minecraft Story Mode, like I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it more as a Minecraft fan, not so much as a
game itself.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you very much though, A, for leading the charge in the discussion of retro versus non-retro games. And I see we had a new follower during that, and thank you for
Cinema Dreamer
and engaging with the conversation. You enjoyed it. I am the person who actually owns this channel. Ape is one of my wonderful mods. So I hope you stick around for me as well as Ape. But yeah, we're gonna get in very shortly to some not golf, Game of Life. So Sabro, if you are around, feel free to hop into VC and start getting yourself ready. Speaking of Sabro, though, I did see she dropped us
They donated
£30
donation
saying you're awesome, sweetie. Thank you, Sabro. I appreciate you a lot. Sabro, one of the amazing people that has helped organise this event, using her skills to my advantage, and I really do appreciate that. Bringing us up to £82, so that's just £18 now away from me drawing your suggestions badly. So not long now for that, 18 more pound. But yeah, I think though what we'll do is we'll take a BRB, a complete BRB, while we get set up for Game of Life, and we'll be back with me, Ave, and Sabro playing a Game of Life shortly. So don't go away. And thank you for your support so far, and thank you again to Afe for holding down the fort.
It's all good,
See you guys in a few minutes.